Welcome to another episode of SPCs Unleashed. We are up to episode 19. That's quite exciting when I figured out the number. It's like, we're nearly at 20 episodes. Actually, we're past 20 if you consider all the ones that we redid. But, this week we are continuing down the journey of lean portfolio management, and we're heading into the exciting land of lean governance. And we are in the hands of Ali, who's blessing us with a purple skyline tonight. Over to you, Ali.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for sticking around. Today, indeed, we're talking about lean portfolio management, and more specifically, the lean governance dimension. Just like last week, lean portfolio management has been sort of a special pet peeve for us. We have other thoughts about it. We figure out we have all kind of other tricks to interpret it and use it to our advantage. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the drivers for proper lean portfolio, let's say operations, governance, and in this case, the competence lean governance, which is, and I'll explain very briefly, it provides oversight of spending, audit, security, compliance, expenditure, measurement, and reporting. The lean governance collaboration and responsibilities require an active engagement of all kinds of roles, including VMO. Yep, we're going to talk about them. LACE, the business owners, enterprise architects, and probably many more. But essentially, it's sort of the foundation of good judgment. So if we try to, if I like to summarize it somehow, what is it about? It's really about remaining in control. It's really about trying to synchronize whomever is working agile with your trains and teams with anyone who is not working in agile. It's in a way trying to generate and gain vertical integration with respect to alignment, with respect to, let's say, how budgets are being used and so forth. And more specifically, and we'll hear a lot about that, I hope, is how to be extremely transparent and data-driven on the highest levels of the organization. So in this show, we will hear Stephan, who's going to share about how to take an elevated focus on supplier dependencies and dependencies on all types of other teams, such as shared services, and understanding how to regain control. We'll hear Nico talk about zombies, and how traditional PMO is your friend, and essentially how to address them both. And we will hear Mark, who will highlight the benefits of insights, who will talk about how money is spent and the discipline of blocker recording, and then the power of proving your worth. So that's also going to be very, very interesting. And what I'm going to do, I'll basically repeat the wise words of my colleagues over here and sit closely and make notes and learn about how this dimension actually works in real life. So with no further ado, what is your special moment, surprise, challenge, or something that you'd like to share with respect to lean governance? And I'll start with you, Mark.
So for me, it's earning your way out. I think a lot of agilists just want to just sweep governance out of the way. It's evil, it's anti-agile, and governance exists for a reason. And how do you introduce new, leaner ways of achieving the same outcome, as opposed to going, it's just bad, and trying to get rid of it? That's my passion here.
I can second that. It sounds boring. It sounds, do we have to do that? But my passion is really compliance and budgeting in this dimension, not in general, but in this dimension, it's compliance and budgeting.
Yeah, right. It's what is it? What is it with agilists who are like completely anti, governance or process? Because if you really have a lot of teams and you create alignment, you create agreements on how to operate, and then that in itself becomes governance. You need to gain insights. You need to have some form of agreement on how we collaborate with each other, because that sort of shuts up the biggest criticasters. How about you, Stephan?
Yeah, I think we have to explore another gem when it comes to lean governance. It's also, you need some rules, some regulations, some basis to reduce variability. And that allows you to stay in control. And I like that, right? So I'm looking to Nico. In the German language, the word control has a bad connotation. Control sounds like someone is sitting on your shoulder, constantly watching you. But being in control means you steer. And I think we will talk a lot about this while we go through the different attributes, the different dimensions of lean governance. And that's my passion as well.
Exactly.
So-
If I may add, controls sounds something sometimes like you have to do it also your own. You have to micromanage, and that's not the kind of control we mean. You can have control with data, with great results, and not doing it by yourself. So I really love this example. Thank you, Stephan.
Yeah, it's just surprising, because even if you'd have agile teams who, in typical agile fashion, it's gonna let the teams figure out their approach, which work best, and have them create alignment and agreement on how to operate. But which is completely true. But whenever you really have a lot of teams, there is just a need to connect it with the rest of the organizations, to sort of have an aggregated overview of how the company is, how the enterprise is doing, and how we are optimizing, let's say, the time and the effort, but also the budgets that we have to deliver the maximum amount of value. So, Stephan, I'll stay with you for a second. Do you have an example on how that looks like in one of your engagements? So, sort of to remain in control, also on the highest level of the organization, even though you have agile teams and trains and so forth. Would you be able to share your story?
Yeah, of course. Let me start like this. Lean and Agile is not just a bunch of loose teams and shared services and functionalities hoping to achieve business agility. So I think it has to do with coordination on this portfolio level, where you have coordination across value streams, right? While on Essential Safe, on an art level, you have this coordination within the value stream across teams. And today we're talking about this coordination across value streams. And one of my stories and experiences is from an industry where we found out we totally neglected shared services, people supporting the value streams. And when we drew our attention to those guys, we found out we had other bottlenecks we neglected over the time. We didn't coordinate that. We didn't pay attention to that. And we always thought the constraints were within the different value streams. And all of a sudden, we found out, certain shared services, or even inflicted by some compliance issues, we had other bottlenecks that we never saw. We detected them, and the so-called other constraints dissolved. And then we could concentrate on what is really important. And we all have learned that if you want to improve a system, concentrate on the slowest integration point. And one of those integration points that were really slow was, for example, procurement, or it was legal, not because these guys did a bad job, but they were not informed, they were not up to speed, up to knowledge what is going on that level. And if we looked at the books, at the processes, at what we already had in place, we all had the means at our fingertips, but we didn't use it. It's like a toolbox. It's on your left, on your right. You look at those tools, but you don't grab them, you don't use them, right? So we had busy people, we had busy shared services. We forgot to bring them together at the right location, making sure there's high transparency and we use the right toolbox. and we used the right tools within the toolbox, and we used it together. So I think lean governance is awesome, creating this environment where you then have insight into what goes well, what doesn't work or should work better, and then you can improve based on really facts and figures. It's at your fingertips.
Sort of getting a systems view on how value flows through the organization.
Exactly. Yeah.
A way of working, sort of.
Yeah,
right?
and not jumping to conclusions. We think there's the bottleneck, there's the missing integration point. You really get this holistic view by stepping back, see the whole picture and see where there's a need for coordination, where there's a need for governance. And governance is really helpful.
Yeah, thanks,
And
Stephan.
Stephan said really something important. So if you go to the meta level, you need also an environment. So it's not done you as a coach, as an SPC, explaining how it works and give them a training and then imagine, oh, now they understood it now and now they will do it right. You need also to create an environment. And why this? So if you go to a meta level, the people, the leaders in portfolio are senior leaders. They come to this position because they were successful in the past. So the things they are doing brought them to success. And so whenever they are in stress, whenever something happened that feels uncommon, they go back to the DNA, to their muscle memory. And it is usually not that what you have teach them. So you really need a great environment to create an environment to build up a new muscle memory. And it's really the important part in this dimension. Not just teach and say, it's clear what you have to do. It's creating this environment, creating the data, creating the cockpit, creating whatever they need. So they learn exercising the new behavior. And that's, I think, what's important from my side.
How, if I can stay with you, Nico, how would you then guide, or what's sort of your experience in guiding these leaders to the right behavior to operate and contribute in lean, what we call lean governance?
It's what you've seen in the last episodes. I'm quite a visual guy, so I need visuals. So to explain, to make stories. You said about the zombies; they will also come as visuals. So what I try to do is all the data I have, or they have at the moment, try to have a huge cockpit where they see the data and having these meetings in front of the cockpits and not anymore in the nice boardrooms with the expensive furniture. Can be the same boardroom, but at the end you have posters, you have live data, and with that you can change the discussion, because now you can go as a coach and say, yeah, but it looks like we have here a problem. We have here no coordination. We have here the bottleneck. So I try to do it visual with the data I have at the moment and try to find out which data are the right ones.
All right. And do you have an example of how, let's say, that looked like in your situation, your engagement?
So what kind of data, or
No, just how you sort of got your, let's say, your stakeholders, the people that you've been working with, in understanding, the system level, the aggregated overview, how I called it before, and of how capacity is being used and how we maximize the amount of value.
Yeah, I have two approaches. So one approach is find the people who really are in pain and try it with them together to give them some material to understand, some exercises to play. And what I have with senior leaders, I do a lot of physical games, which they're exercising and feel on their own body what it means when what flow is, what dependencies are. I try not to say games, because sometimes I don't know how it's in other countries. In Switzerland, it sounds like we're not in kindergarten. I don't play with you. Simulations sometimes work. So I try to find new words to play with them around with small exercises that they realize, okay, that's what he means with cross-functional. Oh, that's what he means with flow. That's what he means with pulling, not pushing. And that's really a game changer, because if you remember the reverse bicycle video in the old trainings, this a video I still like to show and let coaches understand that understanding isn't knowledge, that you just learned it, but it's not in the muscle memory. And that's the way I try to do it, showing some fun videos and doing together exercises, games, and not call it games, not to make them say, oh, we are playing. We're not kindergarten.
Yeah, indeed. As a matter of fact, I just got triggered by the videos from this dude from Get Smarter Every Day. His YouTube channel is fantastic. He makes lately he makes a lot of videos about anything related to spacecraft, which is really fantastic. So yeah, it just got triggered about that. Mark, how about you?
I was going to jump in and just on that front of games, because I love teaching through simulation as well. When it comes to teaching something like flow, Get Kanban is an amazing simulation for that. And, it's not a short one. By the time you put a group through Get Kanban and do a decent debrief, you've done half a day. But I can't tell you how many exec workshops that I've done where we used Get Kanban as the basis of the workshop. And in fact, I did it with one CIO and his leadership team. And it resonated so much with them that he said, I want everybody in my extended leadership team to play it. And we did an event where we literally had 60 senior leaders in the room simultaneously playing it. And most of them had been through Leading Safe. They were a number of years into their journey, and they were at that point where it was really starting to change stuff in the strategic layers that was important to them. And the number of them who came up after that to me saying, we've been talking about flow and WIP limits for so long, and it's hard to act on WIP limits strategically. And I've kind of got the theory, but now that I've been through that simulation, I'm really convicted to lean in harder. And, that's just reinforcing Nico's comment about using simulation. If you go to somebody like Senge or various other leadership leaders, they'll talk about creating a practice field. But a practice field for the portfolio is a difficult thing. And a great simulation can make a great practice field.
Yep.
That's interesting, nice. Mark. What you just mentioned, the practice field. We often forget to practice before we go into action, right? We don't have time for practice. And in sports, you practice a lot before you enter the event. And I think what you just said and what Nico said, simulations help a lot to simplify what are your focal points, and then to really draw the people to this alignment, and it bubbles up naturally. They find out, yes, we have to limit work. Yes, we have to align. Let's start finishing before we start other stuff. Awesome. I like it.
Yeah, so simulations or simulation games, it's a translator of a concept to practice. And typically you need to go a little step further, in my opinion, is that after you've tried it out as a practice, you'd like to add some more real data, real examples, real, day-to-day material to it. And what I've sort of experienced is the difficulty of getting senior leadership involved in an engineering company who creates like large machines, where we had simulation on how to fund trains or how to fund value streams. People understand that, they understand the concept, but it only really resonated when we created Excel sheets, believe it or not, to explain how a train was funded. So we call it the funding spread. So how is the train funded? So it means it gets a little bit of budget from that project. It gets a little bit budget of some other program. It gets a budget from some other area, from another business line. And that gave us a very clear sort of overview of how much work is, how much capacity can be spent on a certain topic, and which also allowed us to, at the end of a PI, look at how much value has actually been spent, has been delivered with that capacity. So all of a sudden, by adding data to the entire thing, we got senior leadership on board, and they just understand the concept of funding value streams. And what went wrong there, it does. If you add real data to it, it becomes very painful to see that. For instance, if you have a project who had the right of on half of the capacity of a train, but then close to nothing of value was delivered at the end of a quarter. Yeah, but it's funded. Nothing really got delivered. So it's the transparency sometimes is just very painful. How about you, Mark? Your example, your idea.
I'm going to go left, actually, because Nico's caught a question from LinkedIn, which is what are the most driving motivations for senior leadership to get into simulations? So I'll start with my technique, and then we'll see whether Nico has something to add. You need a sponsor. If I think about how I wound up with a half-day commitment from a CIO and his executive team to play Get Kanban, I got there because I was actually playing it with a bunch of dev teams. We had dev teams, and I use it all the time, with a dev team at a certain point in their life where I think they're ready to start to think more actively about flow. We get in and we do fundamentally an extended retrospective. We play Get Kanban. And we played it with, and usually I do a few teams at a time. So I had a session with a team. People came out raving about it. And I had a general manager, which in that organization was like the junior executive, heard how excited people were. And he went, I'm going to come in and spend a bit of time in the room the next time you play it, see whether we want to use this more broadly across our other teams. And he walked in and he looked at it and he went, oh, that's really good. He only came in planning to spend about 20 minutes. He wound up staying for the entire thing. And then he listened to the debrief. And he went, I reckon this could actually work for our senior leadership as well. And at that point, I'd never tried it with senior leadership. But he went away and he talked to the CIO and he said, look, I've seen this amazing thing. And I reckon it could be brilliant for us as advancing our conversation at the executive level. And then based on his advocacy, the CIO went, yep, let's do it. And, it was confronting, right? Because I distinctly remember it because, it looks like you're playing Monopoly when you've set Get Kanban up. And so I've got this whole executive team of a semi-governed organization walking into the room and they're all just making jokes to each other. Oh, we're here to play Monopoly with the agile guys.
Yeah.
But then they lost themselves in it. And it was just so powerful for them that they went, we want more of our people to do this because it's such a tangible learning. So, for me, you've got to find an advocate because generally if it's a meaningful simulation, it takes longer than the penny game. Find an advocate, get that advocate to sell it. And if it's good simulation, once you get the advocate and you get one group, it just cascades through the organization.
And may I add to the advocate, if you get this person, and if this person understands simulation is a safe space to play around without having already impact or outcomes that inflict with your daily business, that is really helpful. I remember the times in the army before action, we had those sandpit walkthroughs. It's safe in a sandpit. You have the overall view. You joke around, you even talk to each other and say, okay, that's the plan, but there's a better option without having an immediate effect on your troops, on your people. But you had alignment and that makes it safe. And that's why I like simulations. Give that space to the people. But as Mark said, have the sponsorship that triggers it so people can move from making jokes to, oh, let's talk business.
Yeah, and if you talk business, then you need to mean business. So I'd like to hear some more stories of you guys, because the moment that you translate, a concept or a simulation into a real meeting with real data, with real examples, or with a real overview of ongoing work. Yeah, I mean, these kind of insights are pretty tough, sometimes extremely painful. So in a way, lean governance tries to emphasize that sort of this, radical transparency in a way. I'm going to start with you, Nico. Nico, the habit of looking at actual outcomes, actual progress, and actual ongoing disasters. do you have like an example where, this very data-driven, let's say, post-simulation, doing the real thing, made the portfolio, make a sort of an unexpected twist, an unexpected turn?
I have one, but first I have to confess I'm a sinner. There's a quote from Edward Deming saying, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And usually I was this person having a strong opinion, but not really accurate data. It just felt right. And then realizing I need data and collecting this data and visualizing, etc. That's a really important thing. Just came with the years. In the beginning, I was just having a strong opinion and thought I have data. And of the stories you asked, one of them was after we collected the data we had. The theory or the hypothesis in the beginning was, the dev teams are the problem. They are the bottlenecks. They are not fast enough. They're not delivering enough in a nice time to market time box. And
always
after
the dev team.
Of course, they're doing agile and are worse than before. How crazy are they? And after having a look on the data, we realized it's not the dev teams, it's the whole priority shifting all the day after day. And there's a nice German video we show in our trainings, and the professor Kruse is saying there what you can do to fail with the organization, to fail with the change. And they say the rate of change should be faster than the rate you can implement it. Then you are absolutely in a disaster. And that's what we've seen. They just set a priority, the team start working, and then after they started, they just reshift the priority. And now they have to put it somewhere on hold and start something new. And this putting on hold was like half-finished zombie things. And take this as an image. Imagine your pipeline, your dev pipeline is the whole way in your factory. And these unfinished things are zombies. What we are doing now, we have a hall full of zombies, and no wonder nothing can go through this line and finish, because there are a lot of zombies in between, which hinders you for the flow. And that's what's happening. And this was the visualization somehow. And they realized, okay, we have to do something on portfolio level. That's the problem we have. We have no decisions consistency.
Oh, wow. Having lean portfolio, or like a portfolio sync with, that looks like an episode of The Walking Dead. I just say that's an image that, but I understand that sort of all of the work items, epics, initiatives that we would like to develop, that in a way are just hanging around, unfinished business, sort of living dead, simply because of priority changes. That sounds very painful.
Maybe as a quote, start everything, finish nothing, something like that.
Copyright, Nico. Nice. How about you, Mark? Any examples that you have of this, switching unconventionally?
Look, I've got a million examples. One thing I'd say in passing is be careful not to try and weaponize data. Mm-hmm. Right? If you're using data to generate change, it's very easy, particularly very easy as an agile person, to go, oh, I've got data and I can use it as a weapon, and I know exactly who I'm going to kill with it. And at any moment where you're trying to use data to weaponize change, you are doomed. So be sensitive, because a lot of this is, and when we're trying to kind of shift the world of governance, we're going, I want to build some data that shows perhaps some of the challenges being caused by a current approach and triggers a change, and then perhaps ask us to use new data to inform our ongoing governance process. But making sure once you've got your hands on that data to go, what could go wrong when I get a group of people in the room to look at this data? And how am I going to make sure that I'm not just using it for harm? Would be one of the questions I'd ask, right? But if I went to a specific example, I'm going to be controversial just for a change. And the controversial thing, it's funny, it was a couple of days ago, Eric and I were in a collaboration conversation. We were talking about portfolio flow. And I looked at him and I said, is it wrong that I am not always excited about a portfolio Kanban? And in fact, the longer I've played in portfolio, the less I've obsessed about the portfolio Kanban. And Eric looked at me and went, is it wrong that as a guy who was a Kanban guy, I don't obsess about it either?
Nice.
And, we got to chatting a little bit about it, and it's a little bit confronting, particularly if you think about the fact that I'm talking about the portfolio Kanban in the SAFE Summit in Washington. But the feeling that I really sit in with the portfolio Kanban is it's great for managing the flow of introduction of work to the system. It's not necessarily great once the work's in the system. Because, you've got a set of portfolio Kanban columns that kind of look like the stage gates of your big pieces of work. And they're like many stage gating processes. We have many steps and then we say go. And after that, you have this one step, which is executing, and the whole world happens inside that one step. So the portfolio Kanban isn't necessarily the right tool. And there are worlds in which you can get it to serve that purpose. But one of the ways I test any visualization is what is the conversations that it provokes and what are the decisions that happen on the basis of those conversations. So if you've put together a dashboard, a Kanban, or anything else, and you're not seeing a lot of people have better conversations around it, then you've probably picked the wrong thing or the wrong thing for that moment in time. And to jump on actually Nico's earlier example, one of my favorite dashboards to build for a portfolio is some kind of blocker aggregation dashboard. Because if we think about we want better flow of execution, the biggest thing that hurts the flow of execution is blockers. And the blocker might be, I'm waiting for a decision, I'm waiting for an approval, I'm waiting for a dependency, I've put it on hold because I'm working another priority. Many things might be causing these. And that's a really rich source of data about where the choke points in your system are. And if you get your teams just have a little bit more discipline about the way they use blockers and go, you know what, maybe we'll find the blocker functionality in our tool and we'll think about some way of categorizing blockers and storing a little bit of extra metadata about it. And then we start to aggregate that at the portfolio world and say, well, let's have a periodic discussion where we actually look not just at the individual blockers, but at the patterns of blockers as something that's going to point us towards some of the key choke points in flow. That's been one of my most powerful interventions.
We once had in a portfolio a special magnet for blockers, and it ran out after a day. We had to think about categorizations of magnets. We just put a special color and put it on the whiteboard which was magnetic. And at the end, we needed more of them. That was also a cool sign. But I want to say a family wisdom. When I heard Mark, be careful with the data, don't misuse them. My uncle once told me, with great power comes great responsibility. So be careful.
Well, I do like the Freudian slip over there. With great power comes great visibility.
As well.
It does make very much sense. Especially talking about lean governance, a lot of it is really about transparency and the ability to make the right choices on the highest level of the organization. I haven't heard you, Stephan, about any examples of in your situation where having those insights and the data caused a sort of an unconventional twist or turn in flow or in choosing what to spend our time on.
Yeah, let me draw the discussion perhaps on another level as well by introducing this story. If we talk lean governance, we also talk about the collaboration between business owners, enterprise architecture. One group has the business perspective, the other one has the perspective on the existing landscape and the to-be-built landscape. And all of this is facilitated by the value management office, or in the former days, we called it the program or project management office. So the story goes, one guy out of business perspective said, okay, we experienced that our suppliers are not that good in certain areas. Certain parts are delivered with a lower quality than intended, than written down in the contracts. And they had to deal with that for years. And then the idea came up, okay, why don't we improve our vertical integration in our company? Let's build it ourselves. Good idea. And one will probably say, let's go there. No, where's the data? And interestingly, someone already has done the job. There was data, there was an analysis. And I think data without a good analysis will lead to jumping to conclusions as well. As Mark said, be careful with data. You need a collaboration between the business and the technical or the design view to then analyze what are the pros and cons. So they did that. They found out, yes, the investment could be amortized in a certain time. So let's improve the vertical integration. For example, we, over 2 years' time, we get rid of this supplier because we can do it as well, but we have to improve our knowledge. We have to onboard external help to do so, to come up to that standard. Interestingly, the kind of unconventional turn in that discussion or collaboration wasn't the decision to improve the vertical integration. It was, oh, we have existing business. Almost 100% of our capacity is geared towards what we do now. And all of a sudden, we started talking about Horizon 2. What is emergent stuff? And Horizon 3, what is the future? Because vertical integration, it's emergent and future growth. And now, senior management kind of naturally talked about capacity allocation. And based on the facts and the figures, based on the portfolio Kanban system, which they already had in place, they found out we have to shift the attention of certain capacities. We have to shift certain competencies. And that led then to another discussion. Okay, are our value streams still good enough? Should we create a new one for the vertical integration? Or are we talking about having a small group diving into that topic and then creating the epics that span over multiple value streams? Sometimes interesting. You start at a certain point, but use data, have a good kind of analysis and a conclusion, which then drives further drivers in the transformation. And I think we as SPCs, we as change agents, we should be really having a good, how do you call it? Be sensible to what happens between data and finding out the conclusion. And you should sit there and listen carefully to then help and not to beat people, not to shoot too early and really lose the war.
So I hear you mentioning a couple of things. I hear you talking about the obvious thing of transparency, of course.
Yes.
Understanding virtual integration and other players that you need. So taking the systems view. I hear you talking about a concept which is very much known in product management, which is the so-called 3 in a box, which is having the different engineering disciplines together or different disciplines together to make decisions. So
right.
Product, you talked about the architect, so the technical part, but also in a way line management. So how the organization is geared. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels that you're making also with the stories of Mark and Nico. I see also that Mark is like very eager to add on what you've just mentioned, Stephan. So Mark,
Look, I think it's
what can you add to it?
It's a quick add-on to this whole thread around data, and it's that in the portfolio we don't want to make point-based decisions or look at point-based solutions. We want to move from point-based to pattern-based, and that, I think the Stephan story that he just shared was a great example of that. I could have made a point-based solution, but actually if I thought about a pattern-based solution, it took me down a much deeper strategic path.
Yeah, indeed.
And it was one of the things, being a visual management junkie, when I did my Japan lean study tour, we walk into the Toyota factory, I'm like, I want to see their visual management boards. And I was very excited to see what a Toyota Kanban looked like until the guy held up a ticket and said, this is a Kanban. And I realized that what we think a Kanban is and what Toyota think a Kanban is very different things. But once we'd moved past that.
It's a Kanban in a Kanban.
Well, he was like, a Kanban's like an order. And
Yep.
Here's what it looks like. But I got to their visual management area and I went, and I wasn't allowed to take photos, but boy, I studied it. Everything that was visualized in the visual management space for that factory was patterns of problems. It was a very
We need a new
interesting
episode for
moment.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
We
I
should
think
create a new episode about this topic. I'm in.
I'm looking for season 2 after we've finished all the dimensions to dive in on this.
this is indeed a very good topic. Oh, but let's you know what? Let's take back all of this goodness and try to reflect on how what would be out of our experiences and the mistakes that we've made and the ideas that we got. What would be the sort of the tips and tricks that you would give to an SPC who is just jumping into this brand new world of lean portfolio management, and more specifically the specific dimension? I'm going to stay with you, Mark. What would your top tip be?
So I think last week, I'm pretty sure it was Nico, said be an apprentice the first time. And I'm going to double down on that with seek first to understand. Any kind of governance or control that you look at may not make sense, but you've got to understand what motivates it. I did a bunch of coaching with a bank, and there'd been a lot of work over the last few years by the banking regulator in Australia about accountability of bank executives for responsible lending and things like that. And there was a truth that every executive in that bank knew that there was a chance they could go to jail if the wrong things happened on their watch. And if you're looking at, controls that might have seemed a little bit heavy-handed, and you're thinking about how can I change this, understanding that the person who owned the control could go to jail based on that control really changed the way you thought about it. So the first thing you have to do is understand, why does this control exist? And it's only when you understand that you can start to think about how might this control change.
Nice. Had something similar with the how do you call that? The plant manager who was extremely resistant to change, and therefore also changing the way of working, because the exact same reason. They created this was electrical components, that was their product. And if these electrical components were bad in functional safety, so they were unsafe, then it was literally his head to blame, or his head on the line. So of course he was extremely careful and initially opposing change. How about you, Stephan? What would your tip be for a new SPC?
I just recently watched a video from Professor Akoff where he elaborates on how do you transition from data to wisdom. And Ali, you called us wise men. I still think I'm an apprentice. And when it comes to lean portfolio management, the apprentice, I think, should go to the PMO, to the VMO, because the VMO is a facilitator on that level. A facilitator has an abundance of data, has an abundance of, or a capability of creating networks. So a VMO is, I would call it the gray eminence, right? Go to them, learn from them, be part of such a VMO. And that's like the apprenticeship, because they support, they leverage, they facilitate, they are moderators. And if you have learned how it really works in your environment, what the governance is, then I would suggest, based on my experience, then as a change agent, you can transition into the collaboration of the BOs and the enterprise architects, right? learn from the business owners, learn from the enterprise architects. How do they bring together the different perspectives, deepen your knowledge? And if you have done that, then you probably are at the end of your apprenticeship where you become a tradesman, a tradeswoman, where you can really contribute to that level and become a real change agent.
I can hear the Agile community already talking about what PMO? What?
It's needed. Come on.
How about you, Nico? I saw the preparation you did. How about you? What is your stance on PMO?
Yeah, my sense of PMO, they're really, really important because they have skills you need in your change too. So my experience in my young ages with PMOs were those people who were great in making projects shine. And hey, I want to shine too with my agile stuff. So take these these people to your team. Call it APMO, VMO. At the beginning, I don't really care how they're called, but I need these skills in my transformation. Otherwise, I'm doomed because all the others will look better than I'm looking, and they're great in talking to suppliers. They're great in making contracts. They're great in rolling out rules we have defined together. So PMO is really cool. So my advice is make friends with PMO, with audit. We didn't talk a lot about audit, but make those people your friends because they are not evil. They're not doing a job because they really love to hurt people. They have a job. So try to find out what their job is, what you can make for them to make the job easier for them. And at the end, they will help you remove your own obstacles. So by treating them as customers, as friends, you realize how you can help them, how to make their job easier, and they help you doing your job easier. That's why I really love audit. I love PMOs. Make friends is my tip.
And may
nice.
I quickly add to that one, Nico? Audit time should be celebration time. You shouldn't fear an audit because it works and it's so revealing, no matter if it's an internal or an external audits, right? It should be a no event. And that's why we need lean governance.
Auditors are also great friends to have because a lot of the blockers you run into are people going, that'll never get past audit. But if you can start talking to audit, you can find solutions that they will help you reach that nobody else would have thought about because they were scared about what they didn't know about audit.
Yeah, if things become so big that that we need to think about the portfolio level, we need to involve more people. So the thing is, as an SPC, if we would like to just get a sense of, how good we are at lean governance, what would you measure? So let's move to our sort of almost last section of our podcast. Starting with you, Nico, what would you measure in the Measure and Grow, let's say, list of measurements, if you would like to figure out how good or bad we are doing?
First, I had the same thing as Mark and Stephan. That's why I don't say it. I let them arguing. And then I chose something else just for fun. I don't know if Mark is showing it already, the Miro board. So I'm with we review and adjust the funding that each development value stream receives at least twice a year. So it's about thinking, how do we invest? How do we bring money to the stable teams? I think this is a nice challenge. That's why I would like to mention here, because we didn't talk a lot about it, about funding. So that's why I've chosen that. But to be really honest, if Mark and Stephan didn't choose their thing, I just would stay with them.
Well, gentlemen, let the fights begin. Stephan, so which one did you choose and why?
Okay. My thinking went like this. What's the ultimate goal? It's business agility. So you want to have impact. If you want to have impact, you need a good strategy. You need strategic themes that let you have focal points that people can tie and connect their work to the strategic impact. It's like on a bowling alley. You throw the ball, you see the pins fall. And that's why I chose we evaluate progress towards our portfolio strategic themes at least quarterly. And a VMO is kind of supporting that. You have the portfolio syncs, measuring the progress. You have the strategic review, which then goes into what you said, Nico, adjusting the funding of value streams, changing your processes, changing your toolbox. That's why I chose progress towards our portfolio strategic themes.
Thank you. How about you, Mark?
Look, a lot of the same reasons as Stephan. I think maybe the other piece for me is whether it's strategic themes or OKRs or anything else, the challenge a lot of companies have with them is they polish them, they publish them, and then they forget them.
Yeah.
And you've got to make them a part of your life. And getting to the point where actually once a quarter you look and you go, how are we going on this? What needs to change? What are we learning? Why are we not going as fast as we thought we would? What are we learning from the places where we're going faster? Like that creates health in terms of shifting your conversations. But it also, in order to be able to have that discussion once a quarter, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you need to be doing in the way you're approaching working and metrics and everything else to let you do that. So the fact of all the other work you'd have to do to enable that quarterly conversation, that's why I liked it as my headline.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
and the reason why I had mine too was exactly with that, because you have to think about what is strategy, what is purpose, what is vision, mission, etc. You continue having the vocabulary, which in the beginning nobody was really clear with that. So that was why I started there, and I thought I have to put a more spotlight on the
It's
budgeting.
fine. Okay, so Nico, you also chose the exact same measurement. It's fine. You're all very fine. And honestly, when I looked at it, I was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna try to do something else because I have the same thing. But I thought just for the heck of it, if I want to measure anything and see whether it even exists, whether people are actually doing it. There's a measurement called we ignore sunk cost when making future investment decisions. I don't know. That's so difficult. I've been having so many discussions. It's really tough to really do this because in a way, whenever money is spent, it's and you ignore sunk cost, then it's seen as a write-off. And whenever it's a write-off, that's like a loss, a financial loss on the company.
So
it's like a margin, an impact on margin. So it's if I want to measure something, I try to at least look whether that's existing.
So I can give you a trick on that one, Ali, by the way, because
please.
and it's like the classic thing: you stand in front of a room full of people and you say, "How often do you cancel a project?" And the answer is never.
Yep.
And generally the driver is. It's not just the embarrassment of cancelling a project. It's that usually you carry your project costs as OPEX until you release, which is when you can start to capitalise it. Mm. And if you cancel a project and you're not able to capitalise, most OPEX budgets run way tighter than most CAPEX budgets.
Correct.
And the OPEX write-off kills you. And that's actually the really harsh bit of the sunk cost. Mm. There's an argument to go, the more that I shift towards incremental implementation, the less potential OPEX write-off I have. Right. So if I take an epic and instead of doing a big bang for the epic, I go, actually it's 4 incremental releases. That means I've got 4 capitalization points. And actually, if I was sitting in the MVP cycle, the moment when I make my pivot or persevere decision is actually a moment when I'm in a pretty good state of capitalization. And I'm carrying very low amount of OPEX burden, which is actually what frees me to step away from it. So there's a world where you can go, we ignore sunk costs, ha, ha, ha. And there's another world where you go, set ourselves up to minimize sunk cost, right? Or minimize the potential impact of the sunk cost. And that's how you start to get a shift in that behavior. And I've had some brilliant discussions with finance organizations.
Really nice.
Around that and the idea of the liquidity of an investment.
Make finance your friend.
If you prove it once and do this entire cycle with the colleagues from accounting and finance, then I think the change is not that big conceptually. But thanks a lot, guys. We've been through quite some episodes where we had like a huge amount of measurements. Luckily, this episode, or at least this dimension, just had a few.
Why would
so
you have a
it
lot of
was,
measurements for
relatively easy
governance,
choice.
right?
Yeah, it's I have no idea. You tell me. Which also means maybe we're missing some measurements out of the list of measurements that we have out of the Measure and Grow, let's say, repository. I see that in the preparation, only 2 of us have added something, but I see also that Nico, you maybe still have something to add. You don't have anything to add for the measurement? Not anymore?
I don't like data. I just like my opinion.
Oh, that's, going full circle in this episode. Mark, how about you? What kind of measurement are you missing?
Look, for me, one of the big things is how do we get to cost metrics being evaluated in the context of value metrics? Because I so often say a portfolio that's drowning is the only thing they know how to measure is cost. And if we're trying to get to how do we maximize the value realized from our spend, if I don't have value metrics and all I can play with is cost metrics, it's going to be a very poor conversation. So the kind of shift in the kind of metric maturity model that's used for governance to go, actually, we're talking about value and cost in the same conversation on an ongoing basis, that's one of the biggest maturity needles for me in a portfolio.
Yeah, nice. Which is also, the fundamental basis that you're slowly trying to create for real agility, real insights, and in the end, remaining in control, even whenever you have a lot of agile teams operating in the company. Great, gentlemen. We've been through a lot today, a lot of stories and examples and ideas and controversial topics. Especially in the agile community, whenever things become very big, we tend to have less answers. So this was really helpful. I made notes, and I'd like to thank you for this episode. Sort of ending the show here. Next week, I'll just very quickly look at our episode list. Next week we will have, the next episode will be about agile portfolio operations. So we're going to stay with lean portfolio management, but that will be the last dimension for this core competency. So
just one sentence? Just one sentence?
Go ahead.
Nico, what's your just one sentence?
After you steal mine, so I had to change mine. It's, in my case, try to understand the jobs of audit, legal, finance, etc. They have a job to fulfill. So help them to help you. Mark, my sentence, please.
Well, actually, I started with seek first to understand, and then I looked and went, oh, you're all talking about understanding. I'll go somewhere else and just jump on the bandwagon, because I thought, when you talked about audit, I went, yes, I love that too. So my one sentence is make audit and finance your best friends.
And I would like to
round it off, Stephan?
Yeah, I would like to pull it back to what I try to bring into my daily life: listen to understand, not to respond.
Muy bien. All right, thanks, guys. Let's wrap it up, I would say.
Well, we are
for everyone listening.
Wrapping.
Thank you so much.
And I thought Ali was throwing to me before he was. But now to really wrap. It was lovely actually having some live audience and some fresh flow of questions coming through today. So thank you to those of us who threw us a question or two and gave us some feedback as we talked. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.